All right, history students, here is chapter 2B of Canada at War. Dieppe, 1942. A regimental aid post on the main landing beach near Dieppe, France, August 19th, 1942. Hang on, not much farther to go. Dodging intense enemy fire, the two men made their way to a landing craft. Reverend John Foote of the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry had spent the last 8 hours helping wounded soldiers get to landing craft to be evacuated. Despite great personal danger, Foote refused to be evacuated. The wounded soldiers needed his help. Hey, wait! Someone help him! Foote was lucky. He caught the last undamaged landing craft before it left the beach. This time, Foote got aboard the landing craft. At last, Foote's battle was over. So many wounded, so many left behind. His help was needed. Foote was a prisoner of the Nazis for nearly 3 years until May 15, 1945. He suffered the fate of the other prisoners of war and helped them to cope with their captivity. The Victoria Cross is the highest military decoration. It is awarded only for the most conspicuous bravery, some daring act of valor or self-sacrifice, or for extreme devotion to duty in the presence of the enemy. In 1946, Reverend John Foote was given the Victoria Cross for his courage and calm under fire, for gallantly saving so many lives, and for choosing to stay with other soldiers of his regiment when he could have returned to safety. How did the Canadians get into this mess? Joseph Stalin and the USSR needed help. The attack on Dieppe was meant to force the Nazis to bring troops back from the USSR to defend Western Europe. Canada's top generals, Harry Creager and Andrew MacNaughton, wanted the Canadian troops to attack Dieppe. The Canadians were restless and bored after training for nearly 2 years. So we had the main beach, Royal Hamilton Light Infantry, Essex Scottish Calgary Regiment, and the 14th Tank Regiment. Puis, Royal Regiment of Canada, a Royal Highland Regiment, the Black Watch, and Pourville, South Saskatchewan Regiment, Cameron Highlanders of Canada. Well before dawn on August 19, 1942, the Royal Regiment of Canada embarked on Puis Beach. But the attack was discovered. 5 Nazi vessels met the landing craft. They fired at each other. The landing craft split up to avoid further attacks. The Nazi vessels warned the coastal defenses, an attack is coming. German flares lit up the early morning sky for the Nazi troops who were waiting in the pillboxes on the cliffs atop Puis Beach for the Royals' attack. The Royals ran into vicious crossfire from the defenders in the pillboxes and the houses on the shore. A and B companies were so badly hit by machine fire that the doorways of the landing craft were blocked by dead and wounded soldiers. The Black Watch landed shortly thereafter. They were attacked by heavy mortar fire, which turned the beach pebbles into rocky shrapnel that decimated the soldiers. With over 200 dead and no way to retreat, the Canadian troops surrendered 3 hours later after they launched their attack. At Pourville, the Canadians were piped ashore. This was probably for the last time Canadians entered battle on the sound of bagpipes. There were a few defenders, but the Canadians had landed on the wrong side of the river sky. They had to cross a narrow bridge to attack the Nazis, who bombarded the bridges. Undaunted, Lieutenant Colonel Cecil Merritt led his men over the bridge. There's nothing to it! Stunned, the Nazis didn't react. Merritt dropped grenades into the firing ports of one of the 2 pillboxes that blocked the Canadian advance. Merritt was wounded twice before the second pillbox was captured. He was awarded the Victoria Cross for his bravery in the action and for his courageous decision to remain behind to ensure that his men could retreat safely from Pourville. The Essex Scottish landed on Dieppe's main beach at 5:40 a.m. They were stopped by Nazi machine guns, which swept the beach continually. Soldiers of the Royal Hamilton Light Infantry made their way from the beach and captured a casino. They fought their way hand to hand into Dieppe. The Calgary Regiment's tanks struggled to move on the beach. Half of the tanks were destroyed by Nazi artillery or got stuck on the baseball-sized beach pebbles. The other tanks entered Dieppe, but could only limited damage to buildings before being stopped by the anti-tank barriers in the streets. Above, the RCF and RAF challenged the Germans for control of the skies. At first, the RCF and RAF won most of the dogfights. As the day wore on, more Luftwaffe planes joined the battle. The Luftwaffe shot down 129 RCF and RAF planes and lost only 48 planes of its own. The Luftwaffe owned the skies above Dieppe. The Canadians tried to evacuate the beaches while they still could. Many of the landing crafts were sunk by shells or Luftwaffe attacks. Others, damaged, had to return to the shores of Dieppe. The other survivors surrendered. Less than half of the 4,963 soldiers returned to England after the disastrous attack. The treated the wounded soldiers relatively well. They gave the 1,874 Canadian prisoners water and medical care. In retrospect, the Canadians and British planners made mistakes they should not have made. They didn't consider the Nazis' clipped-off defense pillboxes. They didn't have enough air and naval firepower to help the infantry. They didn't ensure the tanks could work on the beaches. Memorial services were held across Canada for the 907 men who died at Dieppe. The sense of loss was deep and bitter. What would happen now? Could the Nazis be beaten?